Shalom, giving all praises, honor, and glory to our power, Yahweh. Bahasham Yahweh Shah, Bahasham Rachar Kodash, double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, a great millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect of the tabernacles of David, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, wherever you may be, to say Shalom and Shabbat Shalom. All right, we're going to get into a side lesson here, based off actually the first installment of Daniel chapter 11, where we read over a portion here. So we're going to direct our attention to the bottom of the screen first. And we'll pick up, because 1, 3, and 4, we'll pick up at 2. So Daniel 11 and 2, it says, Now will I shew thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. Right now, remember, at the time, this is talking about Cyrus the Great and the 3 kings, or actually four kings that will rise up after Cyrus the Great. They call him was Cyrus the Second. So after Cyrus the Second, so it says, yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And that 4th is talking about Xerxes the First. Okay, it says, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. Now remember, we talked about the Ionian revolt that his father, never really recompensed himself for, because there was a revolt of some Greeks, all right, some Grecians, and he never really got the get back for that revolt. And when Xerxes came into power, the spirit was just on to pursue that all over again, okay, to really get that payback for that revolt, the Ionian revolt. And so then Greece pretty much had to unify to come against Xerxes because of that major army. All right. Now, as far as the other 3, after Cyrus the Second, it was his son Cambyses the Second. Then his brother Cambyses, the brother that is Bardia, okay, and then what was his name? Darius the First, and then Xerxes the First. Okay, and so it says, and a mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And this mighty king is talking about Alexander the Third, or history has him as Alexander the Great. Okay, which we actually, I guess we can get that again because we did read that. If we go back to Daniel chapter 7, verse 6 in particular, but we'll read 5 and 6 because it has to do with both empires, the Middle Persian Empire as well as the Greeks. So Daniel 7 and 5 says, and behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised itself on one side. All right, it raised up itself on one side. This is also the same history that we talk about in Daniel chapter 8, right, where it talks about the ram with the 2 horns. Okay, and the one ram, all right, moved with choler against the other one. As a matter of fact, we might get that. I'm not sure. But let's get this first. So it says, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So this is the Medo-Persian Empire that eventually became known as the Persian Empire. Okay, because Cyrus the Second, pretty much took that power from the Medes. Okay, and so I think he took it from his who was to be his grandfather, if I'm correct. But he didn't kill him; he spared his life. Right. So it says, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard. So this is where Alexander the Third comes in. All right. Now remember the apostle talking about, a museum, I believe it was, where it had, or it was something, I can't remember, but I know it was like a bust, and it had Alexander actually wearing a leopard hat. So you definitely can't make that up. All right, I believe there's a scripture that says that horses are swifter than leopards. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Swifter. Now I'm not saying this is talking about Alexander, but I like to bring the scripture out. And so I'm going to make sure I say that it's not a scripture talking about Alexander. I believe it's in Joel, but I might be wrong. Okay, yep, see. Habakkuk 1 and 8. The horses also are swifter than leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And the horsemen shall spread themselves, and the horsemen shall come from far. They shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat. Okay, so this is just a nice verse there, but just know that it's definitely not talking about Alexander. Okay. So it says, after this I beheld. I just use that because I just like to equate that to how quickly Alexander conquered, which was in a 12-year span. Okay. So it says, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard. All right, so it's talking about the Greeks coming into power, in particular, headed by Alexander III, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And we know after Alexander was put out the way, that his generals fought in the war of the Diadoches to take control of his territories. So we jump over to the next chapter. Oh, perfect right there. Daniel 8:3. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. All right, and the two horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. So the one that was higher than the other are the Persians that came up last, as history tells it. Okay, and I'm not sure if it'll come up here, but horns sometimes mean strength and power. I'll just look into it real quick. There's a little say. There you go. See Quran. So yep, most definitely gonna say it. Hold on. There we go. Look, strength. You see it? There you go. So it's talking about these empires that were in power, vying for power and vying for control. And so the Medes got overrun by the Persians, and it became known as the Persian Empire. Then verse 4 says, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, because the Persian Empire was very, very vast and very great. It had a great, great army. It says, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. And I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west of the face of the whole earth. All right, this is Alexander III coming from the west because, originally he originated from Chittim, also which Chittim, also spelled Kittim, Kittim. Also, it's the same island, but it's also known as Cyprus. All right, Cyprus. So you can look that up. Okay, island in the water. So he came from the west. Okay, and also, we also mentioned Macedon, which is north of there. That was just his original home where he came from, the island. But Macedon is north of there. So either way, it still adds up. All right, it lines up. It says he came from the west. All right, and I was considering, behold, and he goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes, and that notable horn is talking about Alexander III. It says, and he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And that was Alexander III, all right, facing up with Darius III, not directly in battle because Darius was fleeing. All right, he was put to death by his, I think it was his cousin, if I'm correct, named Bessus. All right, but beforehand, there were letters sent because Darius wanted, peace and, come to a conclusion and whatnot. But Alexander, he didn't want that. I was trying to, break it down the most simple way. The letters back and forth is what pissed Alexander off, right? Bear with me. All right, yeah. So yeah, Darius in his letters were trying to kind of create peace with Alexander and try to come to some kind of different kind of peaceful solution. But Alexander, it was just on him from the Lord, not because the Lord's like just like dealing with him, but that was the spirit the Lord put on him, just to conquer all. All right, and so that included his territory as well. And so the letters is actually what pissed him off. All right. So he says, yet ran to him with the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with shoulder against him, and smote the ram and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram, right? Because Medo-Persian Empire, they're all just, under one. The Medes rule first, and the Persians rule after. So they're all still under one same particular territory. So that's why both of the horns were broken, because they're pretty much one empire at the same time. Or not at the same time, but, one empire was ruling over the other. Well, one people, I should say, because they can't be 2 empires. One people ruled over the other. The Medes ruled first, and then the Persians. It says, and brake his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So there you go. So that was Alexander III taking out Darius III, but it wasn't direct conflict. All right. Darius eventually, found out that, Alexander eventually found out that Darius was already dead. Okay. He was put to death by his own men. And one particular name being Bessus. All right. So if we go back here to Daniel 11:3, it says, "And a mighty king shall stand up." All right. So we know it's talking about Alexander III, that shall rule with great dominion. All right, because he was trying to conquer all the known world, which he did 12 years. All right, and do according to his will, because he intended to Hellenize all the the territory that he conquered, which eventually came to fruition, but it just wasn't under him, because after the conquering, the Lord immediately took him out of the way. But his generals carried on, and one in particular being Seleucus. All right, where that great Hellenization, or not in particular Seleucus, but the Seleucid Empire, more so Antiochus, fourth Epimanes. But that great Hellenization fell upon us Israelites. So verse 4 says, "And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken," which is what we just read in Daniel 7. And we read a part of history in Daniel 8, but that Daniel 7, because verse 6, after that, verse 7 comes into play, which is the ancient Roman Empire. All right, they ruled after the Greeks. So it says, "And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken." So that was him dying. All right, the Lord put a disease on him, and then the war of Diadoches, where his generals, came into power. That's what that's talking about. When he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken. Then it says, "And shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven," because there were more generals than just four, but there was four particular: Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, who took over Egypt, and Seleucus, who took over Syria and Asia. All right, and I think another territory he also had, but that's the general gist of it. It says, "And not to his posterity," going back to talk about Alexander III, because his sons were put to death in battle. Wife, whoever else he was dealing with, all of his family were taken out of the way. Right, there was no royal house of Alexander. Right, so they were all put to death. Okay. Um, yeah, that's why it says, "Not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion, which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those." Man, goodness, man, bear with me. All right, so yeah, like I was saying, so it says, "His kingdom shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven." All right, broken up by his generals through the war of the Diadoches. Says, "And not to his posterity," because as we just mentioned, to his generals, his family was all put to death. It says, "Nor according to his dominion," same thing, "which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those." All right, so that's all going to the same thing. All right, so that's all we wanted to read there, from verse 3 and verse 4. Okay, so as we move along to the top of the screen here, and this is from the commentary, and this is just a side lesson here, and it says the division of the Greek Empire, and this is just history that I want to bring up also. It's not necessary to know it, but I just wanted to bring it up because it's also things that coincide with us. All right, what went down. All right, so it says in Daniel 11:2, for four future kings. "And now will I tell you the truth. Behold, three more kings will arise in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than them all. By his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece." And we already talked about all of that. All right, Cyrus the second was in power. Four rose up after him. All right, beginning with his first son, Cambyses the second, then Bardia. All right, and then Darius the first, and then Xerxes the first. He's that fourth one, and it's far richer than they all. So it says, and then it goes down to talk about these things. It says, "Three more kings will arise in Persia." Simply, the angel told Daniel that there would be three more kings in Persia until a fourth arose. The fourth king would be strong, rich, and oppose the realm of Greece. This strong, rich fourth king was fulfilled in the Persian king Xerxes, which we already know. And in particular, this was Xerxes the first, right? So it says the fourth shall be far richer. In fulfillment, there were actually four kings from the time Daniel spoke of until Xerxes. All right, and that's another thing. All right, because I used to have a list. I'm not sure if it's in this phone or not because I didn't check, but I used to have a list of those Achaemenid Empire. All right, and a few actually that came before them. So, you know, um, so there was a whole list, and if you really look at the list of all those kings, there are a lot of guys that ruled. All right, sometimes for a very short period of time, but there are a lot of guys that came into power and ruled. But the scriptures are only going to mention the ones that matter. All right, so there could have been guys that came up, in between, all right? Because there's a lot of different names, a lot of different Xerxes, and a lot of different Dariuses and stuff like that. So there's a lot of individuals. Like if you pull up the list of Persian kings and stuff like that, all right, and there are Medes and Persian kings, however you want to do it. There's a lot of guys that rose up to power a lot of times. Sure, I believe one of those Xerxes actually reigned twice. All right, so there's a lot of guys that are mentioned that actually reigned. But once again, the scriptures are only going to tell you the ones that matter, all right, directly with what the scriptures talking about and us, in history. So keep that in mind. It's not just these four guys. There's a lot of guys that reigned, all right, in the Persian Empire and other empires as well. So it says the four shall be far richer in fulfillment. There were actually four kings from the time Daniel spoke of until Xerxes, the one who did stir up all against the realm of Greece. Either the angel omitted the current king Cyrus, which Cyrus II was the one that was in power, all right, looking only to the future, or he ignored King Smerdis of Persia, which Smerdis is talking about Bardia, all right. The one particular guy calls him pseudo Smerdis, but yeah. So Smerdis, all right, 522 to 521 BC, which was a short time. It was pretty much between 1 year. All right, and he was the brother of Cambyses II, all right, which reigned before him. They were both the son of Cyrus II, all right. So Cyrus II, and then the four came after, starting with Cambyses II, then his brother Bardia, all right, and then Darius I is mentioned, and then Xerxes I is mentioned. So it says because he ruled less than 1 year and was an impostor to the throne. Yeah, that's what history says, but it doesn't really matter. And bear with it because my screen got stuck. There we go. Okay, stuck again. Just bear with it. Okay. My goodness. Satan, man, right? Just working fine. All right. So it says Persia, and then it says Greece. It says these visions and insights regarding the future of the Persian and Greek empires were relevant because each empire attempted to wipe out the people of God at some time, and that's what we want to talk about right here, in particular, Alexander and us. All right. So it says the Persian Empire tried to wipe out the Jewish people during the reign of Xerxes through the plot of Haman, as shown in the book of Esther. Yeah, that's beautiful. I was thinking about the history, but yep, where brothers have actually brought that up quite a lot. As of late, not quite right now, but beforehand, right? Brother was talking about the book of Esther a lot, okay? So it says the Greek Empire tried to wipe out the Jewish people during the reign of Antiochus IV, which that goes back into First Maccabees chapter 1, which we've been talking about that a lot, and we often mention that chapter anyways. It says when he attempted to kill every Jew who did not renounce their commitment to the Most High and embrace Greek culture, all right? Because we were forced, all right? Scriptures talk about how we couldn't call ourselves Jews. So what would we call ourselves? Greek. When you get to the New Testament, that's why you have Israelites being called Gentiles or heathens by other Israelites, all right? Because of those that forsook the Holy Covenant and those that stuck. Look at this, check this out. Those that stuck to the covenant and so on and so forth. Okay, so you get that history there. Man, is this thing gonna work? It's crazy. I want to close that out. I don't necessarily need it. Just want to leave it there. And it's the top half. Where we at right now, the top half is the one that's acting up because the bottom is fine. Let me do this. Let me refresh this thing. Okay, so as we were reading, so it says these visions and insights regarding the future of the Persian and Greek empires were relevant because each empire attempted to wipe out the people of the Most High at some time. The Persian Empire tried to wipe out the Jewish people during the reign of Xerxes through the plot of Haman, as shown in the book of Esther. The Greek Empire tried to wipe out the Jewish people during the reign of Antiochus IV, when he attempted to kill every Jew who did not renounce their commitment to the Most High and embrace Greek culture. Right? Then it goes on to say Daniel 11, 3 and 4, which is the main, scriptures that we want to get into anyways. So it says, the rise of a mighty king. Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the four winds of heaven, but not among his posterity, nor according to his dominion with which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be uprooted, even for others beside these. Then a mighty king shall arise. The angel told Daniel of a mighty king with a great dominion, but his kingdom will not endure, and it will be divided after the death of the mighty king. So it's talking about after the death of Alexander, right? So it says, B says, shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. This was fulfilled in Alexander the Great, who certainly was a mighty king, Alexander died at 32 years of age of a fever after a drunken party in Babylon. Yeah, because probably, popping those both women and men. All right, because he was a Mo. All right, so he was getting in with both. All right, both sexes. Okay, and the Lord probably smote him with a disease. All right, but either way, the point being is that the Lord took him out of the way. The Lord put the Spirit upon him to conquer those 12 years, because you have to understand that was the setup to prophecy. Alexander conquering those territories, his generals taking up those territories, and then one in particular general, right down the line through a long list of kings, but eventually getting to Antiochus IV, right, where he pushed the heavy Hellenization upon us, and that leads up to the New Testament, all right, and even through the period of Maccabees. So all that was a fulfillment of prophecy, even that, all right. So the Lord always has a setup to prophecy, okay, because this world turns according to the Lord's prophecies, all right. So it says, shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. This was fulfilled in Alexander the Great, who certainly was a mighty king. Alexander died at 32 years of age of a fever after a drunken party in Babylon. So after that 12 years, that's conquering, all right, he was no more needed and he was put out the way immediately. It says this prophecy does not mainly concern Alexander because he did no harm to Jerusalem, all right, which is false, all right. This is most definitely Alexander, all right. But let's keep reading. It says, though he conquered the general area, the ancient historian Josephus records the interesting arrival of Alexander the Great to Jerusalem. And this is what I want to get down to. It's extra stuff. You don't need to really know it. It's not very important, but it's always interesting, these things here. Okay, so it says how he was shown the book of Daniel by the high priest, whom Alexander had previously seen in a vision. So Alexander supposedly had a vision about what's about to take place in real time, which we know that the Lord can do these things. Joel 2, I will pour my spirit upon all flesh. And that to qualify that is referring to these latter days here. But in general sense, the Lord can, deal with whoever he wants to in whatever manner he wants in order to push forward his prophecy or get a certain thing done. So he does that with us Israelites, but he also does it on the left hand side with these heathens, okay? Like uh, 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 giving us the freedom through a heathen king to go and rebuild the temple, all right? Return to Jerusalem, all right? So the point is made there. So it says the ancient historian Josephus records the interesting arrival of Alexander the Great to Jerusalem, and now he was shown the book of Daniel by the high priest, whom Alexander had previously seen in a vision. Alexander was so impressed that he spared Jerusalem and granted it religious toleration. Right, so we get into it in the Josephus, which I have those books, but we, obviously don't need to open the book up. It says Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, book 11, chapter 8. So this is in the second book. All right, I believe the first book is blue, the second one is orange, or vice versa. But there's 1 through 10, and then 11 through 20 in the two separate books, the volumes. Right. So it says, now Alexander, when he had taken Gaza, made haste to go up to Jerusalem. And Jaddua, the high priest, when he had heard that, was in agony and under terror, as not knowing how he should meet the Macedonians, since the king was displeased at his foregoing disobedience. He therefore ordained that the people should make supplications and should join with him in offering sacrifices to the Most High. And supplications is talking about going into prayer, which when you're praying, the word actually means beg. So you're begging the Lord, right? So it says, and should join with them in offering sacrifices to the Most High. It says, when he besought to protect that nation and to deliver them from the perils that were coming upon them, whereupon the Most High warned him in a dream, which came upon him after he had offered sacrifice. So now we have, supposed this high priest, pretty much going through this a similar and same vision as Alexander, right? So let me see. It says, yeah, which came upon him after he had offered sacrifice, that he should take courage and adorn the city and open the gates. All right. So going through the whole, we just spoke about the little visions there. Alexander had one, and supposedly this high priest had one too. Okay. Well, let's just get down to it. So it says, whereupon the Most High warned him in a dream, which came upon him after he had offered sacrifice, that he should take courage and adorn the city and open the gates, that the rest appear in white garments. but that he and the priest should meet the king in the habits proper to their order. All right, it says without the dread of any ill consequences, which the providence of the Most High will prevent. Upon which, when he rose from his sleep, he greatly rejoiced and declared to all the warning he had received from the Most High, according to which dream he acted entirely, and so waited for the coming of the king. All right, bro. All right, so it says, and when he understood that he was not far from the city, he went out in procession. My goodness, hold on, bear with me. All right, so I can we get through it. When he understood that he was not far from the city, he went out in procession with the priest and the multitude of the citizens. The procession was venerable, and the manner of it different from that of other nations. The approaching army, though they should have liberty to plunder the city and torment the high priest to death, which the king's displeasure fairly promised them. The very reverse of it happened. All right. So it says, my goodness. Okay. So it says, for Alexander, when he saw the multitude at a distance in white garments, while the priest stood clothed with fine linen, and the high priest in purple and scarlet clothing, with his mitre on his head, having the golden plate on which the name of the Most High was engraved, he approached by himself and adored that name, and first saluted the high priest. The Jews also did all together with one voice salute Alexander and encompass him about. So basically, surrounding him, not like an attack deal, right? It says, whereupon the kings of Syria and the rest were surprised at what Alexander had done, and supposed him disordered in his mind. However, Parmenio alone went up to him and asked him how it came to pass that when all the others adored him, he should adore the high priest of the Jews. Right? So basically, like, hold on now. All right, we are here conquering everybody, but you actually, in a sense, like you bow down to these guys. What makes them so special? If we're conquering everybody's territory, what makes them so special? So they think he done bumped his head or something. It says, to whom he replied, I did not adore him, but that God whom had honored him with that high priesthood, for I saw this very person in a dream. So he's saying that I saw the high priest that was standing before him. He says, I saw him in a dream, in this very habit. All right. So the whole thing they put together in the white garments with the name of the Lord engraved on the plate, he says he saw this in a dream. All right. And we know Job tells us that the Lord visits individuals in their dreams and seal their instructions and so on and so forth. Right. And he can also show you visions at night in a dream. So it says, for I saw this very person in a dream in this very habit when I was at Dios in Macedonia, who, when I was considering with myself how I might obtain the dominion of Asia, exhorted me to make no delay. All right, so that was the Lord controlling his mind, man. All right, Proverbs 21:1, the king's heart is in the hands of the Lord, and as the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. So it says, when I was considering with myself how I might obtain the dominion of Asia, so he's thinking of a military tactic, how I'm going to get this place next, exhorted me to take no delay, but boldly to pass over the sea thither, for that he would conduct my army and would give me the dominion over the Persians. All right, I believe he crossed over the Hellespont. I'm not saying that goes into the same thing, but I do remember him crossing some kind of river to try to get to Darius, if I'm correct. It says, whence it is that having seen no other in that habit, and now seeing this person in it, and remembering that vision and the exhortation which I had in my dream, I believe that I bring this army under the divine conduct, and shall therewith conquer Darius, see, and destroy the power of the Persians, and that all things will succeed according to what is in mine own mind, because the Lord put it in your mind. All right, the Lord put it on your spirit. The Lord gave you the spirit to conquer and win those battles, man. See, in 12 years, and then he got you out the way because you fulfill your portion of prophecy. See, it says, and when he had said this to Parmenio and had given the high priest his right hand, the priest ran along by him and he came into the city, and he went up into the temple. He offered sacrifice to the Most High, not because the Lord's dealing with him, nothing like that, okay? According to the high priest's direction, and magnificently treated both the high priest and the priest. And when the book of Daniel was showed him, wherein Daniel declared that one of the Greeks should destroy the empire of the Persians, he supposed that himself was the person intended, and he was, you see? And as he was then glad, he dismissed the multitude for the present, but the next day he called them to him and bade them ask what favors they pleased of him. So what is it that you need from me? Whereupon the high priest desired that they might enjoy the laws of their forefathers, because that's the most important thing, number one thing, being able to serve our God freely. All right, and that's why we hasten the kingdom of heaven to be established, where we actually be able to do that, because we do it now and openly, but it comes at a cost. All right, but we'll be able to do it right in the empire of Yahushua, right, without a cost behind it. All right, and the heathens are going to have the cost, because if they don't do what we say, they don't worship the high holy days and so on and so forth, they're going to get jacked up. But let's get back on point. So it says, whereupon the high priest desired that they might enjoy the laws of their forefathers and might pay no tribute on the seventh year. All right, which could come on now. We already know about the history of taxation, other things of that nature that was constantly going on with the Israelites. He's just beaten down, even to this very day. It says he granted all they desired, you see, and when they entreated him that he will permit the Jews in Babylon and Media to enjoy their own laws also, he willingly promised to do hereafter what they desired. So everything that we needed was provided for by Alexander. All right. And we didn't have to get into this because the part that we wanted was up above. All right. I guess we can read it maybe if you're interested. All right. Just to finish all this off. So in C, it says, not among his posterity, after which we already talked about this, but it says, after Alexander's death, none of his descendants succeeded him. It wasn't for lack of trying. Alexander did leave 3 possible heirs: a half-brother named Philip, who was mentally deficient, a son who was born after Alexander died, and an illegitimate son named Hercules. All right, so he had 2 sons, and the other one was his brother. All right, so his half-brother, what doesn't matter. The half-brother and the posthumous son were first designated co-monarchs, each with a regent, but fighting amongst the regents eventually resulted in the murder of all possible heirs. So the regents couldn't get along, and then the supposed co monarchs, the half brother and one of the sons, they were killed off in that conflict. It says divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. After the death of all Alexander's possible heirs, 4 generals controlled the Greek Empire, but none of them according to Alexander's dominion, because, as we just talked about, those to come up in power and under his name were all killed off. It says the rest of this prophecy focuses on the 2 of the 4 inheritors of Alexander's realm and the dynasties they established, being the Syrian, the Seleucid Empire, and the Ptolemaic dynasty, right? Because the Ptolemies were the king of the south. They took over Egypt, and the Seleucids took over Syria and a portion of Asia, right? And another portion, I can't remember where it is, but in particular Syria, which that's what we talked about in what we're currently talking about now in Daniel chapter 11, the 6 Syrian wars between the king of the north and the king of the south, all right, being those Seleucids and those Ptolemies, all right? It says, and the dynasties they established, only 2 are focused on because they constantly fought over the promised land because it sat between their centers of power, and that's where we also, suffered a lot, all right, because we were wedged in between those 2, okay? So they're constantly passing over our land to fight and taking things that they needed as they went. And one moment, the Ptolemies controlled Judea. The next moment, the Seleucids controlled Judea. Then it's back and forth, all right? And then when Alexander came into power, we got relief for a moment, but we got some relief from all that nonsense between those other heathens, all right? I'm sorry, not Alexander. I'm merging 2 things together now. Still thinking about Alexander because Alexander was before his generals, but eventually, we got relief from that. Okay, it wasn't like things were just going good for us though, all the way, but those battles kind of subsided because we moved into the war, the Maccabees, right? The Maccabean revolt, all right. So which there was a lot of dying going on there, but at least we had men that the Lord put the Spirit upon to fight back. All right. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to get into that, as an extra side lesson there because it's very interesting, which the main portion was talking about Alexander. All right. So, Lord willing, you were edified to this next one. I'm going to say shalom.